Ubuntu. I am because we are. If I win, then we win. My humanity is bound up in your humanity. As a young boy growing up in South Africa, under the tutelage of Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, may they rest in peace, they embraced and preached the gospel of the shared humanity. I, Pascal Osambe, believe in the shared humanity. But little did I know that my commitment to the shared humanity would be tested, and that test would be given by the School of Life. It was 4 p.m., and I was packing my bags from my teaching responsibilities, and my wife gave her typical call, but this time she was frantic. She was frantic because she explained to me that a police officer had just visited our door. And the officer was asking questions like, "How long have you lived here? Is everything okay?" When he left, she had the sense to call the police station and ask the precinct, why was this police officer at our door? The precinct said that, I can't tell you anything besides sending the police officer back to explain why he came to your door. And my wife explained that he came back and he started to say that the neighbors had called the police on us because they had 3 issues. Number 1, they said that we were gone for long periods of time. Number 2, they frequently saw many cars parked in our driveway. And number 3, they said they smelled weed coming from our general area. Well, Mr. Neighbor, if you remember, we moved in during the holidays and we traveled to a neighboring state to visit my in-laws. Mr. Neighbor, we host a Bible study every single week, and you are invited if you would like to come. Mr. Neighbor, if you look at the houses and the streets outside our home, there's a lot of traffic that moves in and out. And that smell could have come from anywhere, and we are not drug users. I pulled into the driveway and ran up to the home. I was bathed with negative emotion. I was disappointed. I was discouraged. I was angry. I had the sense to go and tell that neighbor off and call him a name. But as my wife and I talked, I knew our higher order thinking had to prevail. We strategized and we said, we need to go and introduce ourselves to our new neighbors. Because the way they chose to introduce themselves to us was by having a police officer come to our door. As we dialogued about who that neighbor could have been, we had a clue about who it was. Because often, one of our neighbors would always give us the look. You know, the look of suspicion, the look of uncertainty, the look of, are you welcome here? And so we went together, and as we were walking, I was arrested, and I was reminded of this notion of our shared humanity. And in the moment, I had a picture of a Venn diagram. Even though my neighbor didn't share my identity, even though my neighbor didn't share my perspective or my background, there was a part of the Venn diagram that overlapped. Therein lies our shared humanity. And as I thought about our shared humanity, I was reminded of a young man who spent some time with the Blackfoot Siksika tribe. He was going to that tribe to prove a theory that hierarchical societies prevail. And as he sat and as he watched this tribe and studied them and conversed with them, he saw that his theory didn't hold because there were certain elements that didn't hold for his theory. This man was Abraham Maslow, and he explained that we have 5 basic human needs that we each share. Physiological needs, your air, your food, your water. A need for safety, to be free from danger. A need for belonging, to have authentic connections. A need for esteem, to feel a sense of worth and a sense of value. He called these deficiency needs because when they are not present, we are aware of them. I immediately thought of my stomach in times where I'm hungry and I start to gravitate towards the fridge to start to fulfill those hunger pains. I thought about some of my former students who would act up from time to time because they didn't feel as though they belonged. They were trying to fulfill those needs in different ways. And then my mind also started to wander to the research of Dan McAdams, who said that there were 3 levels of connection. That if I stayed at the level 1 connection, then my preconceived notion of my neighbor would persist. And the very thing I was criticizing him for would be the very thing that I would inflict on him. That in that level 1 connection, my brain goes into a sleepy state called the alpha state, where my preconceived notions and my biases against my neighbor would persist. But if I chose to go a little bit deeper, if I chose to dialogue with my neighbor, to talk about our shared humanity, to talk about how his actions didn't make me feel safe or that I belong there, and dialogued with him about why his safety and sense of belonging was insulted by our presence, we would start to make some ground. But I would also get a little help from this chemical called oxytocin. And as oxytocin was released, my capacity for empathy would increase. My capacity for perspective taking would also increase. And so I knocked on the door and we introduced ourselves, and I said, I'm standing here because somebody called the police on us. And this action didn't make us feel safe or welcome. And he confessed that he was the one that did that. And as we started to dialogue and speak, we started to find some common ground. We started to move forward in our relationship in an interdependent manner. And as I comb the history books, I see tangible examples of interdependence. I think of John Newton, who profited from the slave trade. He sailed on ships onto the coast of Africa to get enslaved individuals and exchange them for goods. But there was a time where he started to see the humanity in those enslaved individuals. He started to ponder his life, and he penned that famous song that we often sing. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I think of John Rankin, here in the state of Ohio, a prominent conductor on the Underground Railroad, working alongside John Parker and other African Americans to bring 2,000 enslaved individuals to freedom. At his funeral, the reports say that it was a multicultural celebration of his life. And as I daydream about that ceremony, I picture blacks and whites standing together, with the whites calling the black individuals brother and sister, the black individuals calling the white individuals brother and sister, because he knew the power of interdependence. He was able to see the power of proximity, that he didn't see them through the preconceived lens, the stereotype lens, but he saw their humanity as well. I think of Virginia Foster Durr, a Southern aristocrat who could have chosen to sit in her privilege, but she saw a cause worthy of fighting for. The Montgomery bus boycott, she worked together with one of her best friends, Rosa Parks, and E.D. Nixon from the NAACP to desegregate the busing system and our nation as well. Lila Watson would say it like this: if your goal is to come to me, if your goal is to save me, then don't waste your time. But if your liberation is bound up to my liberation, if your liberation from the evils of the past, if your liberation from preconceived notions of who people say you are, is bound up in my liberation to not be discriminated against when I walk into a room, to be not looked through a stereotypical lens, then let's work on the space between us. Because we can become the us, and the them becomes discrimination. The them becomes hate. The them become the barriers that keep a person, a young child, from dreaming of becoming anything that they want to be in this life. Ubuntu. I am because we are. If I win, then we win. My humanity is bound up in your humanity. Ubuntu. Thank you.